few years ago, I made the tough decision to quit my six-figure job, give up my dream home, and sell the car I loved so much to travel with no direction, no friends, no limits, and one backpack for an unknown amount of time. I ended up returning 15 months later, a completely different person than when I left. But I have 3 deep regrets from those 15 months of solo travel. And the crazy thing is, none of them really had anything to do with travel at all. It actually had nothing to do with what I gave up either. I do still miss that car a little bit, but I set out without a single doubt in my mind. I wasn't making a mistake. I felt pure bliss, and it was the first time in my entire life I felt completely and totally free. I went from 12 years of school, playing sports, working service jobs, playing instruments, right into 4 years of brutal university classes, juggling part-time jobs, teaching computer science, internships every summer, right into 4 years of full-time work at a top tech company with the commuting, stress, late-night on-call shifts, and then to top it all off, a global pandemic. So when I left it all behind, the freedom and the joy I felt was, to this day, like nothing I've ever felt. No boss, no responsibilities, with the power and the money to go wherever I wanted. I was meeting amazing people, going to amazing places, and having unforgettable experiences on a daily basis. I remember anytime I'd have a moment to think and reflect, I would have genuine chills up my spine thinking about how surreal my life was at that moment. I was absolutely high on life, but nothing lasts forever. And that brings me to my first regret. I had no exit plan. I was growing and learning in ways I couldn't even imagine. I was connecting with interesting, like-minded people who were living freely. I was having novel, once-in-a-lifetime experiences like hiking an actively erupting volcano, flying in a hot air balloon over ancient pyramids, and crossing seas on multi-day sailboat excursions. I'd adopted this new lifestyle, and I was sure I left my old life behind. It was crazy, but I even swore off ever being a software engineer again. And I was convinced this was the beginning of my completely new life. Well, I'll tell you what actually happened. Once the novelty of my new life started wearing away and the rose-tinted glasses came off, that pure bliss faded as well, and I had nothing to replace it with. So what replaced it was the sense of purposelessness and aimlessness, and I didn't know what else to do, so I just kept traveling and traveling and traveling. I felt like I had learned so much and grown so much that even the thought of returning to my old life or anything even resembling my old job filled me with a deep, deep dread. It felt like I was taking a huge, unacceptable step backwards. I'd be a failure. These thoughts would eventually spiral into deep anxiety, full-on panic attacks, and ultimately ending my trip by emergency booking a next-day flight home. But that's a story for another time. Eventually, I did finally figure it out, and I do now work as a software engineer again, and I genuinely couldn't be happier. And it was actually a big leap forward and not a step backwards at all. But it took even more personal growth and mindset adjustment just to get back here. I didn't realize how hard it would be to assimilate back into normal life. And that's when I also learned that reverse culture shock is a thing. So my first regret is not having some kind of exit plan in place of how, when, or why I'd stop traveling. I needed something to help me happily close that chapter so I could excitedly turn the next page to the next one. My second big regret was following convenience instead of my own innate desire. I was traveling completely spontaneously. I would go somewhere, stay longer if I enjoyed it, and as soon as I stopped enjoying it, I'd just go somewhere else. Everything was booked last minute, and that I don't regret at all. It's an amazing way to travel if you get the chance. But I wish I took more time to think about what I really wanted and ignore what was convenient, close, cheap, or otherwise made sense. I remember at one point, over 12 months into my trip, it was almost November and I was in Vienna, Austria. I was getting tired of being in a city and it was getting cold, so I hopped online to look for flights to figure out how I could escape the coming winter. I noticed there were direct flights to Mallorca, Spain, which were the cheapest flights by far. I was just there a couple months prior, but it was going to be warmer than where I was. It had a beach, and it seemed easier and more comfortable because I spoke better Spanish than I did German. So without a second thought, I grabbed the cheap flights. I booked a couple weeks in an Airbnb in Alcudia. When I got there, it didn't take me long to figure out people don't go to Alcudia in November. There was no one around, and lots of businesses even close up for the off-season. I guess there was a reason flights were so cheap. The weather was nice, I had the beach, but I had a really hard time finding people to connect with. I spent a lot of time hanging out and exploring alone, which I do enjoy, but it really amplified the feelings of emptiness and loneliness when I didn't even have the option to socialize. So my decision to go with what seemed easiest turned into something much harder, facing these difficult feelings. Now in hindsight, this really ties into my previous point of losing the excitement and energy to travel. I was drained, so I tried to find comfort in the warmer weather and a familiar country. I defaulted to the cheapest flights because I had no idea when I'd ever go back to work and see another paycheck. But I wish that instead of trying to find the cheapest way to run away from the cold, I wish I had took a step back to figure out what to actually run towards and identify what I really needed to refill my cup and actually recharge. However, on the bright side, this solitude gave me a space to discover and dive deeper into my interest in photography and video, and honestly led me directly into the idea and creation of this channel. So whatever this all is, and whatever comes from this, whether for me or anyone watching, is a result of those difficult struggles I had on the road. And for that, I'm grateful. My third big regret is not documenting more. And I don't mean taking more photos. I had that covered. I have more photos and videos of places I went than one man could possibly need. And I really found enjoyment in capturing those places. I knew that when I started, that I wanted to capture my adventures to look back on later. But what I didn't realize when I left was there was going to be a completely different, but arguably bigger, way more important adventure going on within myself. And that's not an adventure you can simply take a picture of and preserve forever on Instagram. It takes time and space to think and feel deeply about your own internal experiences, especially when life was going so fast. I will say I eventually did come to that realization, especially towards the end of my trip, at the times that I was at my lowest. But I missed capturing the highs before the lows and everything in between. And those are the times that seem like they're over before you even realize it. And this is one of the goals with this channel. You'll see highlight reels, of course, that's kind of the fun part. But I think I've realized that the real value comes from how you grow and how you learn over time. It's already been immensely helpful to write and create these videos, to reflect on my journey and solidify my takeaways for myself. And I figured if I'm gonna do the work, I might as well share it and hopefully provide value to someone else. So going forward, I want to reflect and document and synthesize and then share the journey going on in here and not just out here. Because I learned that you can go all over the world, but if you don't change because of it, does it really matter? What's the point in living a dream on Instagram if in here, it's a nightmare? So those are my 3 deep regrets. But I do want to caveat this video and point out that these are my regrets as me looking back now. I've changed so much from the start of my travels, and the bald man back then wanted something completely different than the bald man sitting here today. I could look back and say, oof, I probably shouldn't have drank so much. But the purpose of my travels to begin with was to freely experience life without expectations, limitations, or restrictions. I could say, yeah, I could have turned back home way sooner. But at the same time, going past my breaking point gave me a level of growth and a perspective I fully cherish now. So it's easy to look back and play shoulda, woulda, coulda, but I don't know if I would change anything, even if I could. It's part of learning and growing and experiencing life. And these are all things I can now take into account moving forward. But I hope that if you're in a position anything like I was, I truly hope this helps in some way. Thank you for watching.